Testing. Testing, testing. Testing. Hi, D. Royce. Can you hear me? I had to restart, but let me know. All right. Thank you. Thanks for confirming. Where are you watching from, by the way? Hi, Skinny Runt. Where are you guys all watching from? Happy Sunday. We'll give it a few minutes before we begin. Texas. That's nice. It's 5 o'clock over there. So are you going to be watching the basketball game? The Rockets versus the Warriors? From England. Skinny Runt. Wow, what time is it over in England right now? Must be dark over there. 23:15, so that's 11:15 at night. Wow. It's 3:15 where I'm at right now. I'm located in California. So, well, thank you guys for joining. My name is Danny, by the way. Texas Rangers fan. That's cool, man. You know, sports is always a good thing. Keeps us on our toes, especially, you know, with you know, stocks, crypto, Bitcoin, all that. Hi, Skinny Runt. That's cool. Chris, I'll remember that. Thanks for sharing your name. Yeah, thank you all for joining. Yeah, if you could just let me know where you're watching from, what your name is. I'm Danny. So, Chris, you know, with a lot invested in strategy. D. Royce, beautiful weather today. I bet it's actually nice out here in California as well. So, you know, things are warming up, flowers are blooming. Yeah, it's going to be an exciting season. All right. So, looks like we got a couple people joining. Thank you all. I hope you guys are having a nice Sunday. Let me know where you guys are all watching from. So we got, you know, we got Chris from England. You know, we got D. Royce, Texas Ranger fan. We got Ed from Scotland. That's cool. Yeah, we got people from all over the world. What time is it in Scotland? So Chris, you know, it's 11 o'clock where he's at in England. Is that the same time as Scotland as well? Oh, okay, so same time. All right, so you know, I think of Scotland as like the where all the good alcohol is at. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. And you know, thank you all for joining. I usually do these live Q and A's on Sunday. I try to get one in once every week. But first off, I'll cover, you know, just my overall assessment of where we are with Bitcoin. We'll cover, you know, strategy updates. I'll cover like the HODL companies as well, where my price predictions are. But would love for anyone to either provide, you know, your ideas, what your predictions are, any questions you have. We have a lot to cover. So, you know, just put your questions in the chat. I'll definitely cover it. And it looks like we got more people joining. You know, thanks for those who just joined. Let me know where you guys are all watching from right now. We got people from Scotland, from England, from Texas, you name it. So let's go ahead and begin. So where we see Bitcoin right now, you know, the weekend we haven't really seen much price action aside from, you know, Friday, Bitcoin topping up to like 98,000, close to 98,000. It's hovering, you know, around that, you know, mid 95,000. JG Lee joining. I never knew where you're based out of, JG. So we got you from Houston coming. I don't know if you're going to be watching the Rockets and the Warriors, but that's going to be coming up in a couple hours here. But may the best team win. So with Bitcoin, so we'll be covering, all of the latest updates around Bitcoin. Thanks JG for joining. Bitcoin ETFs. We had, volume hitting a record 2.8 billion. So much demand increase going on. Regulatory acceptance strategy continues to just buy up more Bitcoin. In fact, we'll cover the latest updates, and most of you are wondering, are we going to hear about another orange dot announcement? So it's really a race right now. So we think about strategy, the biggest company with the most Bitcoin. Well, there is actually, BlackRock that's ahead of them right now. But just looking at technicals of Bitcoin, here's a key thing, just looking at the technicals of Bitcoin, we see this bull flag playing out. This bull flag has been playing out for many months now. Definitely healthy consolidation, especially with Bitcoin price, getting from like that, low 40,000s up to like $109,000. We can't just have Bitcoin shoot up, like one straight shot, like a roller coaster. It's got to take normal regression. It's got to consolidate. And I think we're in this healthy sine wave where, now that we've retraced down to like 72,000, we're now going to start seeing that sine wave pick up. So we're going to see that healthy consolidation with an upward motion now. So we talk about Bitcoin, how it's going to break all-time high. So I think that where we are in 2025, we may very well have Bitcoin reach $200,000. That sounds like a lot, but that's really, a little over like 1x where current price is. We talk about Bitcoin. It's interesting to think that, we're only a couple percentage away from getting back into that 100K barrier. And again, there were a lot of, sellers at like that 100K point. But I'm going to tell you, after that, that sell off at 100K, I think that the long-term whales are, reaccumulating right now. The smart investors, we actually just heard a recent whale having a 40x hedge on Bitcoin, long-term Bitcoin play, where he had to pay $28,000 on that transaction just to hodl that amount. So definitely some upside, just based on the technicals. Key thing that we see, let me just update the moving average from 50 to 200 SMA. Let's see how it looks on the chart. Key thing is we have Bitcoin breaking out of the 200 and 50-day moving average. So definitely a key indicator to look for. Let's plug in the Ichimoku cloud as well. Okay, so let me just remove the MACD. We see MACD bullish divergence going on. Let me just put on the Ichimoku cloud as a technical indicator just to see where. But based on the Ichimoku cloud right now, we're hovering above the clouds, which is a key thing. We want price to be above the cloud. Anytime when we're below the cloud, there's definitely going to be shorters taking action there. So I think we're in a healthy state. Bitcoin is, ready to start, gradually increasing. I think May is going to be a good month. So let's hope for some huge upside. All right. So looking at the chat, so Evan, so I understand, what you mean there. Just be patient. Things are going to run up very quickly. Okay, so Chris is saying skinny run. They say that May is the best month for Bitcoin. Is that correct? Is this going to be a good month? I think so. My gut instinct is telling me so, but you never know. I might be wrong, but I do think that because Bitcoin price has been retracing for quite some time now, we may very well see, price start running up. Before we continue with technicals, let's just go through like some updates. Just with Cryptos R Us, I highly recommend if you don't follow Cryptos or Us, I highly suggest you follow George. Definitely a great YouTube influencer. He really provides good context on Bitcoin. So definitely give George a follow. Cryptos are Us, and find him on YouTube. I listen to him like every morning, basically. But one of the key things is, with the whole tariffs, starting April 2nd. I mean, when you look at it, the Wall Street has been on a 9 consecutive day of gains, so longest streak since 2004. That's one thing we got to keep in mind, that we may very well have S&P, get back into that 6,000 range, and everyone who was like trying to like spark fear and all that, sell-offs and all that, definitely buy the dips. Because why? It's always going to trend up when you look at Wall Street and Bitcoin and all that. Here's an interesting post from Watcher Guru, the whales. In that, Trump says, "I want crypto. Crypto is important because if we don't want it, China's going to." So, it's a political battle right now in terms of government seizing, Bitcoin. United States has done its job. It has like, about 250,000 Bitcoins. China, like, not too far behind in terms of the total HODL amount. So U.S. and China are neck to neck, but given the stance of Bitcoin and how much of a influence Bitcoin has on the whole world, I think that the government is eventually going to implement, Cynthia Lummis's Strategic Bitcoin Act of 2025. We're gonna hear, potentially buying, Bitcoin with the gold reserves. So that's going to be exciting news. Warren Buffett, I mean, one thing that we should always, just keep in mind is Warren Buffett, he has resonated in our lives, in that, we learned a lot about finance when it comes to Warren Buffett. Who's going to be the next leader where we will learn from? But, the simple key things that we learn from Warren Buffett is to, like, be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful. How do we put that into context? I look at that through the lens of, okay, so like, be fearful when others are greedy. So what does greedy mean when we look at technicals? So let's kind of, pivot back to, like, let's say MSTR's stock. So let me just put on RSI. So actually, this isn't working. So I'm going to remove the Ichimoku cloud, and then I'm going to put RSI. So be fearful when others are greedy. So what does greedy mean? How do we put that into context? So greedy means when you have an RSI of like 80 plus, that's what greedy means. So you're buying at the top. Okay, so be fearful when others are greedy. So this is, human psychology. Whenever we become greedy, we feel like Bitcoin price is going to like the moon. I mean, going from like 50,000 to like 109,000. The relative strength was like overbought at 80 plus. So that's what it means from, what Warren Buffett has taught us. But be greedy when others are fearful. So look at that March, that oversold situation when Bitcoin price was hitting like, like getting close to like that 70,000 threshold. So be greedy when others are fearful. So, key thing is like, buying when, stocks are in an oversold situation, or if Bitcoin's in an oversold situation. So that's a key thing, we should always keep in mind. But Warren Buffett, the CEO, is actually going to be stepping down end of year. So kudos to him for everything that he's done. But just overall, like with Warren Buffett, I mean, he's saying that it would be a good idea to own a lot of other currencies. So he's basically saying Bitcoin, especially for, those in like, 30s, 40s, or even later, who have more years to invest in. So definitely, something to keep in mind. Of course, Warren Buffett, I mean, he was able to become successful with everything he's done in the stock market. So why even consider Bitcoin, especially with, his age gap? I think he wants to paint that story of success with just the stock market because of all the success he's already done. But for the newer generation, so whoever takes ownership of, Berkshire Hathaway, of course, embracing crypto market is definitely going to be the next opportunity. So why does Bitcoin go down on weekends? So, that's definitely a good question. So I think that now there's a lot of monitoring, especially during the Monday stock market open. Bitcoin tends to perform the same way that the Wall Street does. However, we have seen decoupling where Bitcoin can have positive days where Wall Street just tanks. We've seen that, but overall, there's a lot more inflows, especially on weekdays. That's where the money is at. We see that with like the ETF inflows. A lot of money right now purchasing ETF related Bitcoin plays. So Saylor posts an interesting post. Too much blue, not enough orange. So I think there's going to be another announcement from Saylor. He's just stacking sats. We're getting close to, one Nakamoto. So let me know what your thoughts are. So come tomorrow, how much Bitcoin is strategy going to announce? And, will it get to, 660,000? We're getting close to, close to that Nakamoto. So will Saylor get to 5% of the Bitcoin reserve? So very interesting. We've heard about the 4240 strategy. Um, Definitely bullish. He's going to pull down the levers, pull that ratchet, continue to, use the ATM, convertible notes, issue more shares to buy up more Bitcoin. So what do you think is the amount that's going to be announced tomorrow? And how much Bitcoin will strategy have come tomorrow? So we'll see. Only time will tell. So here's an interesting visual. You know, Sailor is just stacking, orange dots. I mean, it just continues to happen. I mean, we've seen purchases back in like COVID time. He bought it at like $8,000. He bought it at the higher points of like 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. 55,000. So you name it, he's just been buying. It doesn't matter what the cost of Bitcoin is. He will continue to dollar cost average down. Here's an interesting post. So the top 5 hodls. So we have strategy number 1, 553,000 Bitcoin. We have Mara at like, close to 48,000. We have 21 Capital, ticker CEP, soon to be XXI. CEP stands for Cantor Enterprise Partners. Man, this stock, man, this puppy has been going like $12 all the way up to like $60. So over 500% gain is just crazy. I mean, seeing CEP shoot up like that, it's kind of like when you look at the miners, like not even going up as much. Will there be room for the miners to shoot up in the way that CEP has done? We've been seeing lately a lot of like small cap stocks shooting up. So I think that the miners, we may very well see a big breakout coming very soon, especially with the last 3 months having a big sell off. So definitely some upside with strategy, Mara, CEP, RIOT, CleanSpark. Why? Because these are the top 5 hodls. So we have strategy, Mara 21, RIOT, CleanSpark. In 6th and 7th, you have Tesla, Hut 8, Coinbase. So these are some big time companies with hodl amounts of Bitcoin. So as soon as Bitcoin gets up to new levels, like up to like 200K, man, these companies' market capitalization is just going to shoot up. All right, so here's an interesting visual from HODL 15 Capital. So US Bitcoin ETFs bought 18,000 Bitcoin last week versus how much Bitcoin was mined. So just last week alone, 3,150 Bitcoin were mined by, like North American miners and other miners around the world. But look at how much Bitcoin was bought by ETFs. So that's a factor of like 6 times more of what is mined. Typically, you have around 450 Bitcoins available each day. But the fact that, financial institutions are buying up Bitcoin like there's no tomorrow, it's like on a lifeline right now. Think about what's going to happen. The rate of purchase, the consumption of Bitcoin is just going to keep shooting up. And what does that mean? Supply and demand. We're going to have a supply shock, meaning demand is going to go up to the levels where it'll push up the price for every Bitcoin purchase. So that's why I do think that with M2 money supply shooting up and, the scarcity of Bitcoin kicking in, along with interest rate cuts that are coming in, we may very well, have Bitcoin run up, to levels that we're going to see be very, very nice. So Chris Millis, so definitely give him a follow if you haven't already done so. Big time believer of Bitcoin and strategy. So one of the interesting takeaway is that he's saying strategy is leading the digital transformation of energy by capturing low frequency energy from the catalog world fiat that is decreasing in value and transmuting it into high frequency energy in the digital world, Bitcoin, that is increasing in value at scale. So let me just zoom in with this visual. So you see low frequency analog energy. Think of that as a fiat. It decreases in value. We have inflation at 7%. Inflation will just make money devalued. But he's able to suck up all of that, investor cash through selling of the stocks through ATMs, convertible notes, convertible bonds, issuing stock, and then, converting it to high frequency digital energy where shareholders have, Bitcoin for every share that's held. So like what Saylor says, it's not a money glitch, it's a digital transformation of the capital markets. So one of the key things to highlight is that, with strategy, they have so many levers. I mean, he's just pulling the ratchet down. He's just buying up Bitcoin. He's trying to get to that 5% of the entire, global supply of Bitcoin. And what does that mean? Once you get to that Nakamoto, man, he's going to be a big time bank that no other government or company can even get close to. So definitely some huge upside. All right, so just looking at the chat. Okay, so it looks like we got Sean joining in. So Sean, I mean, it's really up to you. I mean, if you got conviction in RIOT, then I think buying at single digits, I wouldn't worry so much. It really just depends on your investment strategy. Are you holding it short term or are you holding it long term? Really just depends on what your system of investing is. You can get like a 1x. That's great. You can hold longer term. It really just depends on what your strategy is. But I do think that there's a lot of potential. Let's say if you sell and then the news around AI customer comes into effect, you may very well lose on a day of a 50% jump. So I definitely do think that your cost average, man, you're winning right now. So I wouldn't even be worried. Just set it aside, set it and forget it. Don't worry about it because a lot more people like myself, I'm holding at a much higher cost average, so definitely where you are, just know that you're at an advantage right now. All right, so it looks like we got Katie and Alan joining as well. So thank you for joining. We'll definitely cover CleanSpark as well and RIOT, the miners. So just, put your comments, questions in the chat. We'll cover all of that. Let's continue. So here's my drawing of strategy. So here's what I've been covering. So with the 340 support level, this is level 1. So the prior resistance level 1, that's now the new support level. So we're gonna, have our foot stepped on the level 2 of the ladder, which is that 440 resistance. So, going back to that 440 resistance, which is in orange at 440 here, as soon as we get our foot stepped onto that ladder at that resistance level where price action hovers around there, we're going to get to that 440 resistance, and then 540 will be the next step, which will be around this range, level 3. But that's all going to be dependent on whether Bitcoin gets to that 100K. So as soon as we get to 100K, we're going to get back up to that prior resistance top off. But what does that mean once we have Bitcoin reach 200K? It may very well be we're going to be above of the Ichimoku cloud. We'll probably be on cloud 9 at that point. Not saying that it will happen, but we may very well hear 4 digits for strategy stock. So definitely some huge upside. So I hope that this visual gives you perspective on what my forecast is of strategy, given the fact that Bitcoin price is expected to break 200K. So one thing to cover before we go through technicals and questions and all that, Coronet trades, I mean, buying in at $10 at that low point for Mara when it was at sub $10 recently, it's gone up by about 50% from that low. So this could easily 2x from these levels, according to this post. Current true points to an attack of the 26 to 30 area. This is a dip buy on pullbacks. So definitely, some huge upside with Mara coming up. So with RIOT Platforms, just think about the energy capacity that RIOT has. I mean, they announced solid earnings report, definitely all-time record with their revenue generated for Q1. So it's only going to continue to go up. I think Q2 is going to be even better data. I mean, last year, because we have earnings reporting on hindsight data with Bitcoin in that bear market, I think that now we're going to see earnings report reflecting on appreciation of revenue, just with the FASB change and the accounting changes. So the fact that RIOT has so much energy capacity, they have the land, they have the facility, and they're looking at scaling out more land to support that AI infrastructure. So any ink deal that we hear is going to be great. In fact, they just acquired the rhodium mining capacity with another 125 megawatts at the Rockdale facility. So that will turn on where they're going to increase their mining capacity, as well as the Kentucky site that they acquired about 2 years ago. So that's all going to turn on while they focus on developing the HPC AI. So I definitely do think that there's upside with RIOT from a fundamental standpoint. And just to note, with RIOT, I mean, they have 1 gigawatt capacity, so that's huge. I think with Stargate project in Texas, what if we hear an announcement where SoftBank invests into RIOT? We saw what happened with Cypher when that news came out. I mean, it shot up the share price. AI, it's been tapering off recently, but I think that because we've heard from Donald Trump that the United States will be the powerhouse of crypto and AI, there's going to be trillions of dollars flowing into AI. We hear Nvidia investing billions and billions of dollars into the United States. So that is why companies like RIOT, they're ahead of the game, because why? They have the gigawatt capacity already set up. So here's an interesting post from micro to macro. This is on CleanSpark. So forward PE ratio of 7.81, down 63% from its high 15 months ago. 165% upside just to get back to that previous high. Is breaking out from the 5-month downtrend. Can pretty easily hit the $30 range this year, roughly 265% higher. If Bitcoin gets near 150,000, could potentially to hit $50 range if Bitcoin gets towards 200K. So definitely bullish. And we did see how CleanSpark went from like $3 to $24 within a matter of weeks. So where the current price is, I mean, last week it looked as though it might get to $10. So there you go. I mean, just with the matter of like a week or two, it just goes from like low price all the way up to like, close to double digits. So this is the trajectory for CleanSpark if and when Bitcoin price gets to that 200K. So for those of you who have a cost average that's higher than where CleanSpark is, do not panic. Do not panic sell. Why? Because what goes down very quick will shoot up very quickly, especially with Bitcoin catapulting up. All right, so Katie Wentworth, does CleanSpark report on Thursday? Alan, what do CleanSpark earnings next week? So I know that it's going to be coming up very soon. I don't know the exact date, but I do think that, because Riot started off with the mining news where they announced solid revenue for the quarter, that's definitely going to be seen with CleanSpark as well. Obviously, we know that CleanSpark has a high throughput of mining, definitely close to like, 20 Bitcoins per day with their hash rate, along with their fleet efficiency at 16 joules per terahash. I think that there's going to be a huge upside where the stock can very well just shoot up into that double-digit range. But just look at the technicals of CleanSpark. It's been just hovering down, very similar to like what we see with Bitcoin. But Bitcoin broke out, MSTR broke out, but we haven't seen that with with the miners yet, right? Just from a near-term perspective, Riot is on a recent breakout, but I do think that we're getting close to that retest. For Riot, for Mara, we're seeing that that trajectory change. So it's lagging for the miners, but I think that we're headed in the right direction. Definitely strategy broke out first, Bitcoin broke out first, but I think the miners are going to have a big breakout very soon. For CleanSpark, where the current price is 881. I think next week, I think in May, we're gonna have this potentially get to that price action. I wouldn't be surprised. I say we have like a 20 to 30% chance for CleanSpark to get into that $15 range, but into that double digit range, I'm saying we have a 50% chance of getting into that double digit range. And that's just like getting from like $8.81 beyond that $10 range, 50% chance. That's on a conservative level. And same with Riot. I definitely do think that for the month of May, definitely 50+% of Riot, definitely retesting this prior resistance in orange, level 1, $10, and then testing that prior resistance of 1250, which we've seen the price hover since like November all the way to like February. So for 3 months it was hovering around that $12 up and down that range. So definitely we have that steam for it to get back to that $12 range. And we saw back in November that 1572, where the current price is right now. As soon as Bitcoin breaks, this is when Bitcoin reached the all-time high of 109. So where we currently are right now at $8, let's say if Bitcoin gets to like $109, we may be around like that, $13, $14. But as soon as Bitcoin gets to like 150, 200K, oh man, the sky's the limit with where Riot can go. Just scaling back, looking at what this puppy did back then. I mean, of course, we're looking at it in hindsight, but where it was like $3 all the way up to like $80+ dollars. So can that happen again? Maybe not to that level of like percent gain, but can it go 3 to 5x? I wouldn't be surprised that that happens. Same with Mara. Mara, I think that Mara has that potential to get back into that prior resistance 30, and it can just very well shoot up to like $80, as soon as Bitcoin gets to new levels. That's why there's so much volatility with these miners, like there's high risk investing in the miners because you think you're buying in at a good price and it can just keep going down. But then once it goes up, that's the difficult part. So that's why it's key to like be invested in these plays, because timing when to get in, it could be easy for some, but difficult for most. But time in the market will allow for you to have that wave kick in, and that's where you take advantage of the miners taking off. All right, so I hope that kind of gives you my overall assessment on the technicals. But let's take a look at Bitcoin price. So we're seeing Bitcoin hover at, the sub $95,000. So it's taking a slight pullback over the weekend from, that top off of 97,800. But anything can change, especially with the recent sell-off over the weekend. We may very well see Bitcoin, changing direction. But it'll be interesting how the markets play out tomorrow. But let's take a look at Wall Street for the futures. All right, so the futures right now, it's really difficult to say. It's saying S&P future, minus 0.32. But it'll be interesting to see how the Asian markets open up very soon. But everything looks flat right now. So thank you, Katie. And Katie, are you still invested in SoFi? I mean, lots of good news with SoFi coming out. So, if you're still invested into that, they might be the next Palantir. So good luck on that one. I remember you talking about Palantir at one point. All right. So what questions does everyone have? Yeah, I think you're going to win big on that. There's a lot of good things coming out from SoFi. I mean, think about it. I mean, think about the LA Rams, the football team. I mean, the stadium is called SoFi Stadium. So the fact that you have a football stadium, with the name SoFi Stadium, you're in a good state. Think about like the Los Angeles Lakers, right? The stadium is, crypto.com. Crypto has been doing so well. I mean, the branding is up there. So the fact that you have, a stadium called SoFi Stadium, you shouldn't worry because the company is in it to win it. And yeah, the company is showing that it's making money. Earnings report is showing solid growth, and they're really automating things with their AI systems. I don't know the exact details, but it sounds like SoFi is a good investment as well. All right, so what other questions does everyone have? Bitcoin hovering 95,000. Is next week going to be a good week for the big five hodls? So big five hodls, with strategy, how much Bitcoin is Saylor going to announce tomorrow? Too much blue, not enough orange. We even have President Trump. He wants crypto. Why? China wants crypto. Sean, I'm gonna tell you, man. My very first purchase of Bitcoin was 2013. Okay, but don't think that I held on to it and all that, and I'm like super like I have a boatload in Bitcoin. But you know what? Even though I bought that long ago, never look at the price in hindsight. Okay, you can't invest into things looking at things in the rear view mirror. Look at it from a forward approach. Embrace Bitcoin, and if you don't get it, study it. Everyone is buying Bitcoin. We don't want to be the latecomers. Just keep sprinkling into Bitcoin. There's only 21 million Bitcoin. I'm not trying to convince you into it, but just do your research until you fully understand it. And once you do understand it, then you'll understand that you're not late with it. So don't feel like you missed the boat on Bitcoin, because definitely no, you haven't. There's definitely opportunity. Can't go back, only Marty and the doc. What does that mean? Is that like a saying? I don't know if that's from like a cartoon or something. So, miners, I'm very excited. I think the miners are going to have a really good breakout. Oh, Back to the Future. Oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. Yes. Yeah, you can't go back. You know, just don't be a latecomer with Bitcoin. I mean, still early. I mean, Saylor says, buying at 80K is ridiculously cheap. I actually bought more Bitcoin on Friday, 94,000. You know what? You look at it from like 5 years from now when Bitcoin gets to 1 million, you're buying at like 90% discount. Don't think about the price too much. Just keep stacking sats. That's one thing I've learned. My very first purchase of Bitcoin was 2013. I could have bought way more back then, but you know what? I'm not going to make that mistake anymore. And just looking at it continue growing, I'm not going to make that mistake. So that's one lesson I've learned, and I hope that you all learn from that as well. From just embrace Bitcoin if you haven't already done so. Um, it's going to be the future. Um, we talk about AI and all that, but I really do think that, once AI technology gets to the point where machines start interacting with machines, the only way to operate that is through like Bitcoin. So, AI machines may leverage Bitcoin as a way for them to work once it gets to that point of advancement. So there's only 21 million left. There's only 21 million, and we're at like 95% of it already all mined, and people owning it. So only 450 bitcoins mined every day. But you look at it right now, just looking at these numbers. Where is it? Look at this. So last week, 3,150 Bitcoin mined. But look at what's happening right now. Financial institutions, they're just buying up so much Bitcoin right now. 18,000 Bitcoins bought up last week. So it's really a race right now. Like, Fidelity is trying to catch up. Um, I think that right now BlackRock has the most. As of April 30th, they have over 600,000 Bitcoin. That's over $58 billion. Fidelity has, close to 200,000 Bitcoin. That's, $19 billion. Grayscale has 190,000. ARK Investment has, close to $5 billion in value. So United States ETFs, they own about 85% of all the Bitcoin, total of like 1.1 million. But when you think about Saylor, he has like half of what all the US ETFs have right now. So he's really a Bitcoin bank right now. So it's really a race. So Sean, I'm not saying that you're wrong with that. Just yep, you're gonna win big, man. So what you're doing, eggs in one basket. People say diversify and all that, but some people have conviction, and you'll win big. So just right now, just remain patient, because I think great things are going to be coming. And is anyone going to the Bitcoin conference? So it seems like I was one of the winners for the Bitcoin conference. So I think Riot's going to be announcing. I'm going to be getting a ticket redeemed for the Bitcoin conference. So I'm planning on going to the Bitcoin conference and listen to the guest speakers, and even Jason Less is going to be presenting there. So it'll be very cool to just learn and be around that group of Bitcoiners. So I'll share more with all of that. Thank you, JG. I'm excited. I was shocked to hear about that as well, along with other winners. It was more of just resharing a post. So I wasn't planning on going, but the fact that I was one out of the many that got selected for that. Why not, right? You can see Saylor. What if I see Saylor or like others? Definitely would be a cool experience. But I'll definitely come back and share my experience after that event. But what questions did everyone have? Sean, I definitely do think that life will change for you. You're taking the unusual route, but life will change, and it can change. By going with that strategy. All right. So, what other questions does others have? I think we covered. Bitcoin price currently at 95,000. It'll be interesting to see how next week plays out, but all depends on Wall Street. Are we going to have another green week? Bitcoin, are we going to see it break into that 100K? If so, we're definitely going to see strategy, retest this level 2 stair stepper. At that point, we're going to see it, hover around that 440. Mara, it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when as to when we're going to see the price action break out of this bull flag. Along with RIOT, it crossed the 50-day moving average. I think we're close to that, that 200-day simple moving average. As soon as we get to a few more dollars, we'll break out of that 200-day moving average, and then we're going to be off to that races. It's been just shooting down so much, but what do we see when we had that huge pullback? September, $6 all the way to 16. Bitcoin gets up to 200K. Man, this puppy can go up, 3 to 5x. That goes for Mara, RIOT, and CleanSpark. We've heard from micro to macro. Bitcoin price gets to 200K. Let's see that again. Micro to macro. Let's say Bitcoin gets to 150K. He's forecasting CleanSpark to $30. If Bitcoin gets towards 200 plus thousand, we're in that $50 range. So that just shows you the volatility upside for these miners. That's why it's risky to invest in the miners, right? Because it can go down 50, 60% or more, but when it goes up, it's definitely going to just keep shooting up. All right. So that's a good strategy. Anything Bitcoin related, definitely upside. That's definitely the future commodity. There's nothing better than Bitcoin. All right. So, what other questions do you all have? If we don't have any more questions, perhaps we can just call it the end of this live session. First off, I just wanted to thank you all for continually supporting this channel. I've seen, a lot of returning members. Like, we have Katie, JG Lee, who's been a huge support. Sean just recently joining on board. Alan, we have Chris from Europe. D Royce joining. So very grateful for all. Okay, so Katie poses a question: why are the miners so shorted? So definitely a great question. So Katie, why are the miners so shorted? They're shorted because that's just the nature of the mining sector. So we hear a lot about investors, the big time whales of strategy. With during the time when strategy shot up, these investors, they're looking at alternative plays to short, and the fact that Bitcoin price was retracing down, that is where investors are going to shorting against the miners. So that's really why miners are being shorted right now, because Bitcoin, the simple answer is because Bitcoin has been going down, shorters are hedging against the miners to bring it down as low as possible. And what does that mean? That's when the whales can reverse the strategy and buy up at lower costs. So it comes down to, because Bitcoin is going down, the rich people can take a short position, bring down the price. And once they can get it down to that price where it's extremely low, get down like 60, 70% in loss from the all-time high, that's where they can cover their shares, rebuy back at a low price, which is what we're seeing now. One thing to keep in mind is that financial institutions like BlackRock, they've been buying up so much CleanSpark, Mara, Riot. So we hear a lot about Bitcoin, but BlackRock has been buying a lot of these miners as well. So you know just follow what the money is doing, and at the end of the day, we'll all be rewarded for that. Yeah, no worries, Katie. I know we're all busy in life. Um, I don't expect you all to be here all the time, but really appreciate the return and the support, the questions, and I would encourage to share it with your community as well. It's all about love with one another, faith in Christ, and even with fitness. I'm really big on like powerlifting and finance and stocks, Bitcoin investing, and it's not just me just talking about stocks and Bitcoin all the time. But I hope you all are, doing well and continue to grow and just be grateful. And we'll talk again next week. But thank you all for joining the live stream. Really enjoyed this session. So thank you all, and hope you all have a good evening, a good night, and let's hope for a good upcoming week where we're going to see Bitcoin just shoot up. So I think good things are going to be coming, especially with what we've been seeing. With all that uncertainty in April. The Q1 was such a bad week, but things are turning around. I think that now we're beginning to see market stabilizing a bit. Yes, we may have turbulence still, but Bitcoin, we're seeing that trajectory change. So all of that is looking in favor for Bitcoin strategy and the Bitcoin miners. So let's not lose hope. Let's just stay focused, and our time will come. So thank you all. Thank you, JG, for your comment there, along with others, D. Royce, Katie, Sean, Chris. So have a great rest of your day. Take care.